In the Scottish Highlands, Jimmy is watching TV with his sisters and cousins when a siren suddenly blares outside. Their aunt quickly shuts the door, warning the children not to move. Fear spreads as chaos erupts around the house. Jimmy calls for his father at the door, but it begins to shake violently. Then, the infected, zombie-like creatures burst inside. They attack the girls with brutal speed, devouring them while Jimmy remains hidden. Taking advantage of the distraction, he escapes, only to witness his mother being torn apart in another room. As he races through the house, he sees his relatives one by one succumbing to the infection. Somehow, he manages to escape outside, but the streets are swarming with more infected. Desperate, Jimmy runs to the church to find his father. There, the priest insists the infected are not cursed but saved, claiming this is Judgment Day. He presses a gold cross into Jimmy's hand, urging him to keep his faith. Before long, the infected crash through the church windows. Jimmy flees, but his father remains behind, convinced salvation awaits him. The creatures overwhelm him, biting and turning him into one of them. The horror is driven by the rage virus, contained by continental Europe, but leaving the UK quarantined and cut off from the rest of the world. It becomes a wasteland where survivors must fend for themselves. 28 years after the initial outbreak, a community of survivors lives on Lindisfarne Island, a safe zone separated from the mainland by a tidal causeway. Today marks a rite of passage where a boy named Spike will learn to kill his first infected. At dawn, his father, Jamie, prepares breakfast, but the meal is cut short by a noise from the bedroom. Isa, Jamie's wife and Spike's mother, has fallen. Sick and fragile, she panics at the thought of her son facing training. An argument erupts, but quickly dissolves into quiet resignation. Isa's mind often drifts, plagued by memory loss and confusion. She sometimes forgets where she is or what's happening. Back in the kitchen, Spike is met by Sam, who hands him a brand new bow. Outside, the community gathers, cheering the boy on and wishing him luck. At the town gate, Jenny reminds him of their harsh law: anyone who leaves may return, but no one will ever be rescued. Too many have already died trying. Together, Spike and Jamie cross the causeway into the mainland. As they walk, Jamie recalls stories of the old world, where people lived far from the sea, an idea Spike struggles to imagine. They pass a bridge and venture into the forest, always alert for danger. Soon, they come across a lone, crippled infected crawling through the dirt, a bird perched on its back. When the creature pauses to peck at worms, Spike steadies his bow, looses an arrow, and drives it clean into the infected's neck, a swift and silent kill. Another infected creeps up from behind, but Jamie swiftly drops it with an arrow. The noises attract more monsters, and Jamie kills one more, but Spike asks him to let the last one go. Jamie nods, proud of his son's restraint, though Spike himself is unsettled by the act of killing. They press deeper into the forest as they marvel at wild animals darting through the underbrush. They stumble upon an abandoned house, where a grotesque sight awaits: an infected hanging upside down, its head covered with a sack, letters carved into its back. Jamie guesses it was once a prisoner, left here as bait. Now it's nothing more than another monster. He urges Spike to take the kill. But as the bound creature thrashes violently, fear roots the boy in place. Suddenly, the infected frees itself, lunging, and Spike's reflexes take over. He looses an arrow, piercing its skull and dropping it instantly. Shaken, they move on. Not far ahead, they come across the remains of a half-eaten animal. Spike looks up, and freezes. Its head and spine hang grotesquely from a tree. Jamie stiffens. Only an alpha infected could have done this. His voice low and urgent, he orders Spike to move faster, quietly. When they emerge into an open field, a massive horde of infected, led by the alpha itself. Panic sets in as father and son sprint back into the forest, the monsters thundering after them. Jamie turns the flight into a lesson, teaching Spike how to shoot while moving, where to aim, and how to strike for the heart and the head. They retreat to the abandoned house, fending off infected with arrows as they search desperately for cover. At last, they spot an attic entrance. Clambering up, they drag the hatch closed just as the horde floods the lower rooms. Hours crawl by. From the slits in the boards, they watch. The alpha remains outside, waiting, patient, relentless, unwilling to leave. In the attic, Jamie explains that alphas are larger, smarter, and nearly impossible to kill with arrows. They've already run out of ammunition, so their only choice is to wait. Spike blames himself. He missed shots, hesitated, and froze in fear, but Jamie reassures him, telling him he did incredibly well for his first time. As night falls, they spot a distant light moving through the dark. Jamie explains it's the quarantine patrol. On the opposite side, a fire flickers in the distance. Spike wants to know more, but Jamie avoids the question and quietly changes the subject. Eventually, Spike drifts into uneasy sleep. His dreams twist into a nightmare, his mother drowning, buildings trembling. He wakes to Jamie shaking him, but it's not the dream that's rattling the house. The entire structure is collapsing. They scramble out just as the roof caves in behind them. Knowing the noise will draw the infected, father and son sprint toward home. By the time they reach the causeway, the tide has risen, flooding the path, but it's still shallow enough to cross. Splashing through the water, they suddenly hear the flapping of wings overhead. A flock of birds scatters, and the Alpha appears on the causeway, charging after them. Spike slips in the water, but Jamie hauls him up, urging him forward. Together they push through, reaching the mainland just as the Alpha closes in. Jamie blows a whistle and shouts, signaling the guards. The gate floods with light as arrows rain down, striking the monster. The Alpha staggers but doesn't fall until one last arrow, ignited with fire, pierces its body. Roaring, it finally crashes down into the water. Jamie drags Spike to the gate, where Jenny hesitates, watching for any sign of infection, before finally opening it to let them inside. Later, the village celebrates Spike's survival and his first kill. Jamie tells the full story, but Spike is uncomfortable with the celebration of so much killing. The crowd lifts Spike on a chair and he's allowed to drink. Overwhelmed, Spike rushes outside and vomits. While catching his breath, he spots Jamie sneaking around with another woman, and is devastated to realize his father is having an affair. Shaken, Spike returns home, where Sam is quietly watching over a sleeping Isla. After recounting his strange adventure, Spike asks about the fire he witnessed. Sam suggests it was Dr. Kelson, hinting that Jamie avoids the subject for a reason, though he offers no details. The next morning, Isla wakes with a pounding headache and asks for medicine, but Spike has no idea where to find any. When Jamie returns, Spike can't bear to face him and leaves the room. Gathering courage moments later, Spike confronts his father, asking why Kelson hasn't been called to check on Isla. Jamie reluctantly explains that Kelson went mad years ago. He recalls a haunting memory from 15 years earlier. A group of foragers, including Jamie himself, discovered thousands of bodies laid in perfect lines around a massive fire. Kelson appeared among them, calmly tending to the corpses before waving at the horrified group, who fled in terror. Spike, desperate for help, insists Isla still needs Kelson. He also accuses Jamie of his affair, which pushes Jamie over the edge. He strikes Spike in anger. Regret sets in instantly, but Spike flees upstairs to his mother's side. When Jamie tries to follow, Spike pulls a knife and warns him to stay away. Though Jamie quickly disarms him, he chooses not to escalate further. Instead, he returns the knife to Spike and quietly walks away. Not long after, Spike sets fire to a barn, then rushes to alert the guards, insisting the entire town must help put out the flames. He promises to stand watch in their absence, but the moment he's alone, he sneaks Isla out through the gate and onto the causeway toward the mainland. Isla panics when she realizes where they are, calling desperately for Jamie and her father. Spike manages to calm her, assuring her that a doctor will make her better. They walk all day before finding shelter in an abandoned building. Restless, Isla grows tired of keeping watch and wakes Spike to talk. She shares stories from before the outbreak and points out that he looks strikingly like her father. As the conversation deepens, she begins calling him Dad. Embarrassed but protective, Spike tells her to get some rest while he keeps watch. Exhaustion betrays him, though, and he dozes off. While he sleeps, an infected slips inside. Drawn by movement, it chews on his shoelaces before spitting them out in frustration. Then it creeps toward his face, ready to bite, when suddenly it's yanked back. Spike jerks awake, convinced he only dreamed it, until he notices the infected's corpse nearby. Isla insists she doesn't know what happened, but a flashback reveals she had smashed its skull against a statue. Meanwhile, elsewhere, a squad of soldiers is fleeing a massive horde. They fire frantically, but their ammunition runs low and many are wounded. The infected overwhelm them, turning their fallen comrades into fresh threats. Forced to shoot their own, the survivors dwindle until only 3 remain. They retreat into a tunnel, slamming the gate shut behind them before opening fire on the infected pressing against the bars. Inside the tunnel, the soldiers barely have time to catch their breath before an Alpha ambushes them. With terrifying strength, it seizes one man and rips his head free along with his spine, using the gruesome weapon to strike down another. The third soldier, panicked, fires wildly at the swarm pouring in through the entrance. Meanwhile, Spike and Isla continue their journey, struggling with Isla's worsening delusions. When they pass an old statue, Isla lingers, speaking to Spike as if he were her father. Her nose suddenly begins to bleed, and the scent draws a nearby infected. Spike reacts quickly, killing it with an arrow. But when a few drops of blood land on Isla's forehead, he frantically wipes them away before she can touch them. The noise brings more infected, and the two are forced to run. Spike fires arrows whenever one gets too close, barely buying them enough time. Exhausted, they reach a gas station and wrestle with the door until they manage to slip inside. The air is thick with fumes, burning their lungs. The infected pour in after them, forcing Spike to hurl whatever he can find to slow them down. Still, the creatures surround them, driving the pair into a dead end. Just as all hope seems lost, a ceiling hatch bursts open. A soldier named Eric leans down, shouting for them to hide. He opens fire on the infected, and the muzzle flashes ignite the fumes. A massive explosion rips through the building, flames consuming the monsters as they shriek and thrash before collapsing into ash. Safe in their hiding place, Isla and Spike emerge unharmed. Isla vomits and clutches her head in pain while Eric approaches, shaken but alive. Desperate for direction, he asks them what to do next, but when Spike has no answer, Eric's panic only deepens. Eric decides to join them, even offering to carry Isla as they travel. After several hours on the road, they pause to rest and eat a few apples. Eric checks his phone, though the signal is gone and the battery nearly dead. Curious, Spike studies the strange device. He's never seen one before. Eric shows him how it works and pulls up a photo of his girlfriend. Spike, unfamiliar with plastic surgery, remarks that she looks odd. Before Eric can reply, the phone dies, and in frustration, he hurls it aside. The group presses on until Isla, distracted by a sound, wanders off ahead of the others. She follows the noise to an abandoned train swarming with rats. Inside, she makes a startling discovery, a pregnant infected woman. At first the creature lashes out, but Isla calms her with surprising gentleness, realizing she's about to give birth. When Spike and Eric arrive, Isla insists Spike cut the cord while she cleans the newborn with water. The fragile moment shatters when the infected mother roars and lurches forward. Eric instantly raises his gun and shoots her dead. Coldly, he turns the weapon toward the baby, declaring it should die too. But Isla and Spike, after a closer look, are convinced the child is human. Eric doesn't hesitate, he aims to fire. Suddenly, an infected hand bursts through the ceiling, seizing Eric and dragging him upward. A towering alpha drops into the carriage, holding Eric's severed head. Seeing the slain mother, the creature howls in fury and charges at the trio. They flee through the train, Spike firing arrows that barely slow the alpha but by precious seconds. Clutching the infant, Isla scrambles with Spike out onto the tracks, the alpha close behind. Just as it seems they won't escape, a dart hisses through the air and strikes the beast. The alpha staggers, roaring, before collapsing into unconsciousness. Dr. Kelson steps from the shadows, tranquilizer gun in hand. After subduing the alpha, the stranger introduces himself as Dr. Kelson. His skin is stained with iodine, which he explains protects him from the virus. Holding up Eric's severed head, he calls the alpha Samson, noting that the creature has roamed the area for years. Though Kelson usually keeps his distance, he's watched Samson long enough to know his patterns. Spike immediately begs for Kelson's help with his mother. The doctor agrees and leads them to his bone temple, a haunting shrine he has built to honor the dead. Towering pillars of bones rise from the ground, lashed together with rope, while skulls are stacked into a jagged spire. To Kelson, infected and human remains are the same, both belong to the fallen. Eric's head is cast into the fire. When the flesh is burned away, Kelson carefully washes the skull and asks Spike to place it on the tower. Later, Kelson listens to their account of the newborn and concludes the placenta shielded her from infection. He then runs tests on Isla, only to confirm a far crueler truth: she has terminal cancer. The diagnosis shatters her, and Spike, too young to grasp the finality of the illness, lashes out in panic. He insists medicine could cure her if only they could steal it. Isla calms him, confessing that she had long suspected the disease but never knew for certain. When Spike looks away, Isla silently signals Kelson her consent for mercy. The doctor explains two guiding principles of his philosophy: a memento mori, to remember death, and memento amoris, to embrace love even at the end. Handing the baby to Spike, Isla whispers her final comfort before following Kelson into the forest. Spike recalls his happiest memories with her until Kelson returns, carrying her skull, cleaned and polished. After placing the infant in Kelson's care, Spike climbs the towering shrine and sets Isla's skull at its highest point, just as the sun begins to rise. The following morning, Samson charges across the field toward them. Kelson hurriedly pushes Spike and the baby into a hidden pit he had prepared for emergencies. The alpha discovers their hiding place and roars, straining to tear off the lid. Failing, he storms away, only to return moments later, smashing through the wood. He seizes Kelson, thrashing him violently before crushing his throat in a choking grip. Thinking fast, Spike snatches one of Kelson's sedative darts and plunges it into Samson's arm. The alpha stumbles, collapses, and falls into a heavy sleep, sparing Kelson's life. Afterward, Spike sets out alone. Carrying the baby in a basket, he returns to town. Naming her Isla after his mother, he leaves her at the gate with a note addressed to Jenny. In it, he explains that he doesn't wish to be found, that Kelson is not mad, and that the child is clean. When Jamie receives the letter, he breaks down, then rushes to search for his son. But the tide is high, cutting him off from the mainland. 28 days later, Spike roams the mainland alone, surviving by hunting. When an infected attacks, he kills it effortlessly with a single shot. More creatures follow, forcing him to flee until a rock wall blocks his path. Only one pursuer reaches him, and Spike dispatches it just as easily. Then, unexpectedly, he hears a startled voice. Turning, he finds Jimmy, older now and wearing his father's cross. Jimmy is impressed by Spike's skill and reveals he has gathered his own team. As another wave of infected approaches, Jimmy's group leaps down from the wall to join Spike. Together, they dispatch the creatures with brutal efficiency, fighting with a strange joy. Jimmy celebrates the victory with a cheer and tells Spike that they should be friends. Please like and subscribe for more video like this. Thanks for watching.